Chapter 13. Envelope in hand, I did my best to follow the vague directions the mentor had offered me to complement the red marker on my map revealing my target. Head north a few blocks, look for the flashy sign for the girly bar. Know what I mean? It's near there. You'll see the sign for Antonelli's. The streets were thick with halflings early on, but the nighttime crowds grew considerably when I crossed Rushton Road. Everything, in fact, was taller on the other side. Buildings, vendor stands, the whole shebang. A new bubble confirmed my suspicion. You have discovered the human district. Plus 35 XP. I dismissed the message, swiveling to look for the flashy sign indicting what he called a girly bar. I wished the little map revealed a bit more detail, but the interface didn't conform to my desire. Like I'd suspected, only sights seen lifted the gray shroud to reveal street names. So, there was Vogel's shoeshine stand, and Rushton Road was where the human district began. Big red letters popped up in the center of the district to confirm. While I tried to maintain as direct a path as possible to my destination, every desired turn proved to be a dark alley. Asking a few people finally got me directions to head east, then north up the amusingly named Easy Street. Now there was something to aspire to, having a place on Easy Street. As it turned out, the sign was lit by flashing fairy creatures inside jars placed around the perimeter of a painting of women performing lewd acts. I shuffled past when one too many lingering looks from the men loitering outside spurred me. One made a hip-thrusting motion, then laughed when I rushed off. Finally, I spied Antonelli's just up the street. Ignoring all the usual signs in the window about the finest veal in River City, I let myself in the front door under a tinkling bell. A waitress looked up from where she dropped silverware rolled into maroon napkins onto a table, then shot an uncertain look toward a velvet booth at the back. A hostess in dark silk and outrageous heels hustled to meet me at the podium. Her hair was piled, and her earrings dripped diamonds. Okay, so I could recognize expensive women's clothing. They just didn't offer such eccentricities in the character creation screen. When I cleared my throat, a tinny sound emitted. It was going to take some getting used to. The all due respect voice came naturally. "I'm here with a delivery for Mr. Antonelli, if he'll see me." After dipping into a back area for a few seconds, she returned to the podium, then waved me forward. The crowd chattered as we passed by their packed tables. One girl screamed about wanting tiramisu, and my mouth watered, which was crazy when I thought about it. It wasn't until I spied an old-school push-button telephone mounted to one wall that my brain shifted to analysis mode. I scanned my surroundings to find that, even though glowing crystals shone from a recess in the ceiling over the bar, much of the place was also lit by oil lamps in the centers of dining tables. The hostess peeked in through a pair of swinging doors that had been propped open. I glanced over her shoulder to spy Goombas galore. Then she turned to show me her palm. "Business! Wait just a sec." A man stood before a table inside wearing wrinkled slacks and a mismatched hoodie. I nodded at my guide, then turned my gaze toward the patrons out front lest I appear nosy. My ears did the spying as a low voice spoke from the room behind. "You want to get high? That's your fucking business. You want to skim your share of the proceeds off the top to snort up your fat nose? Your business. But when you come up short with our end?" A humorless laugh echoed. "Then it becomes my business. So I tell you what, Jerry, I'm going to take what you got here, and you're going to go get the last 1,000, then deliver it back to me by noon tomorrow. Yeah?" "Yes, sir." The quivering response left me wondering if he'd pissed his pants yet. "Good. Now get the fuck out of here." Hoodie man pushed past me, then the one inside called out, "Oh, and Jerry." The druggie I assumed was a dealer for the family turned. He poked his head back across the threshold. "If you don't have my money tomorrow, I'm going to break all your fingers." A few patrons swung their heads to peer toward the back, but all returned to their meals in short order. That the man yelled his threat across the restaurant told me plenty about who was in charge around there. Jerry left without a word. When I dared a glance, the man seated on the far side of the table centered in the room beckoned the hostess with 2 straight fingers. He looked the part, nestled in his chair with a round belly tucked under a nice pinstripe. A silent type in a black suit stood in the corner. A plate overflowing with pasta and a bunch of discarded shrimp tails decorated the table. Associates seated across from him talked with their hands in an eerie mirror of communications I'd witnessed too many times to count. He looked the part, nestled in his chair with a round belly tucked under a nice pinstripe. A silent type in a black suit stood in the corner. A plate overflowing with pasta and a bunch of discarded shrimp tails decorated the table. Associates seated across from him talked with their hands in an eerie mirror of communications I'd witnessed too many times to count. When the boss man spotted me making my way toward him, he cocked his chin in my general direction, and the place fell silent. I shook off the tremors of the hand clutching the envelope. The hostess left me standing there without offering a seat before returning to the front. Well, seems the little girlie brought me a message. His companions laughed gruffly like it was pretty fucking funny. Hopefully my disguise proved as disarming to others I encountered. He flipped the fingers of one hand toward me. I drew the envelope toward my chest. I'm looking for a Mr. Antonelli. After a moment, I remembered to smile just a bit. You him? Question is, who might you be? He wiped his mouth on a linen napkin, dropped it without ceremony, then rose, hitching up his pants before planting his hands on his hips. He wasn't much taller than my halfling character, which made him very short compared to most humans I'd seen in the district outside. Stout, too. He enjoyed the hell out of his pasta. I considered the wisdom of giving out my name, then decided I'd never get more work if no one knew what to call me. I'd make something up for now. Ren. You can call me Ren. Close enough, yet not too close, I figured. It only then occurred that the name might not pop up in the bubble he saw over my head. Do they see bubbles over my head? Antonelli Sr., he replied, thrusting out his hand nearly into my chest. What's a cutie for a halfling, like you doing in the delivery business, Ren? I shook his hand, steering it away from my body. Just looking to get my beak wet. I formed a shit-eating grin, but softened it just enough to come off sweet. Ha! Get her beak wet. You guys hear this one? My kind of girl, right? He snatched the envelope, then slid back into his seat, where he wedged his gut under the table. A message bubbled up into my field of view, pulsing gold until I read it. You have completed a quest, a quick run. You met the following objective. Go to the human district and deliver the sealed note to the addressee. Rewards. You may ask the mentor 3 questions. $50. His companions chuckled on cue, and I suspected I'd missed some off-color joke. Had they said something while I was distracted by the quest announcement? Possibly. I needed to focus, lest the system messages distracted me from important details. Dealing with the mob in the outside world, especially when they'd cut your throat for what you were doing, was a constant measure of one's attention span. You feel like picking up another delivery while you're here? Whatever I might have missed, it must not have been crucial to their first impression of me. Antonelli tucked the envelope under the edge of his plate. One for the road, don't screw it up, and the recipient will pay you $50. He forked some pasta, then swirled it against a big spoon. That was one thing that struck me as odd in the game. Italians in the outside world had mastered the forking of pasta without spoons ages before. Then I recalled the absence of electric lights. I was in a city out of time. Was I walking myself into trouble, or might this quest lead me where I wanted to go? What's the delivery? Antonelli snorted through a mouthful of spaghetti. You want to ask questions, or you want a cash job? I had to admit it was a stupid question, but I recovered. Cash works. He produced a violin case from the seat next to him. The cliché of it left me suppressing laughter, but I took it in both arms as if it were a newborn. Antonelli tapped one edge of the case. You break that red seal, you get nothing, capisci? Never fuck with the packages. You are being offered a quest, one for the road. Deliver the sealed violin case to Pracha the gnome at the spot specified on your map. Condition: the violin case must remain sealed. Rewards: $50, 175 XP. I accepted the quest, then shot Antonelli a determined, agreeable nod. No worries, I've got this. Assuming you're not incompetent and you manage to get the case there sealed, come back when you're looking for a little side work. I presume you aren't afraid to get your hands dirty? He grinned wolfishly. I forced down my desire to cringe. Antonelli prattled on. I like the discreet type, and hey, he leaned in to whisper, make sure you come after hours so we don't attract attention. I got nothing against halfies, but not everyone's as enlightened as me and my boys here, eh? The mutters of the crowd on the opposite side of the swinging doors resonated suddenly, swelling in my ears. Sounds good to me. I repressed a shudder, clutching the violin case as I nodded and took my leave. I wasn't used to being on the receiving end of the innuendo, but I couldn't be sure if he was making the kind of offer his tone implied. Adding in the after-hours bit hadn't helped his case. Maybe it was completely innocent, as innocuous as an offer from a killer could be, but it wore like slime. Although I couldn't help but consider whether choosing a female character had been a mistake, I banked the thought for later. Chapter 14. The place Antonelli sent me was across town. The sound of rushing water filled my ears from the road next to a park at the top of a ravine. Its deep footprint was traversed by a long north-to-south bridge on a slight angle, but I had to trudge all the way up to the northernmost road, head west, then past a racetrack to get to the area where most of the gnomes apparently did business. No way was I risking going down into the ravine just yet, as I had no idea how to cross that river, and with a package in hand, no less. As I went, a street map slowly filled itself in with the roads and landmarks I explored, but nothing more. It was a bit like walking in the dark with only a penlight to illuminate my surroundings. I noted places of interest on my map in case I might need to know later where to acquire specialty items. You have discovered the racetrack and entertainment complex, plus 35 XP. I wasn't lazy, but my short legs made the journey take way longer than I might have estimated if I had a clue how far I was being sent. I confessed to wondering how much a horse cost as I passed the stables arrayed on the south side of the track. Something made a sound more like a roar than a whinny from the stables, and I hurried my short little legs along. Those probably weren't the kind of mounts I could afford anyhow. A strip of businesses lined the road, facing out from the track, with signs advertising the Gentlemen's Club, off-track betting, pawn and loan services, a diner, a seedy lawyer, and headquarters for some security outfit. Looked about right for the area. An announcement popped into my field of vision when I crossed into the new district belonging primarily to the gnomes. You have discovered the Gnome District, plus 40 XP. The buildings were squat, like in the Halfling District, but woodsy and often crawling with vines and flowering bushes. I wouldn't have been surprised to see a house built from a giant mushroom. Pratcha's workbench sported walls glinting with daggers and other sharp implements on hooks behind the counter. I didn't recognize half the things gracing the cases and long row of workbenches. You couldn't have kept me from peering curiously at it all, entrancing as it was to imagine the function of the contraptions, as I waited for the smiley gnome to finish with a customer. "I'm Pratcha. What can I help you with?" he announced, startling me. I whirled to face him over the counter. He was taller than I expected, until I realized from the hollow ring of his footsteps that he was standing on a wooden riser back there. Better to meet the eyes of his human clients, no doubt. "Oh, is that for me?" He tugged at his beard with dirty fingers, excited at the prospect. Good thing his pointy cap was already black, or he'd surely have dirtied it too. The brass-ringed dark goggles he wore pushed up on his forehead gave evidence to that, the lenses blotched with fingerprints. The once brown leather apron protecting his clothes was similarly stained, prints marking even the brass rivets all the way around its perimeter. His bracers matched the grubbiness of the rest. "If you're Pratcha, then yes, this is for you." I pushed the violin case across the counter to him. "You have completed a quest. One for the road. Deliver the sealed violin case to Pratcha the gnome at the spot specified on your map. You met the following condition. The violin case remained sealed. Rewards, $50, 175 XP. He raised the sealed case, blue eyes twinkling, as he slipped a filthy paw into his pocket. After pulling out a wad of bills, he peeled off my payment. When he slapped the money on the counter, I snatched it as if he might change his mind. "You ever seen this model?" Visions of all sorts of fancy antique weapons popped to mind as Pratcha snapped the latches open right there in front of me. A Tommy gun, perhaps? But the top flipped back to reveal a shiny black branch. I just marched all the way across town to deliver a stick? Maybe on a tree? Take a gander at this. He held it up for my inspection, and I let the analysis bubble focus in my field of vision. Crooked wand of truth type. One-handed weapon. Quality. Rare durability. 50 of 50 successful attacks with this wand will force the recipient to tell the truth when asked a question. Requires successful D20 roll and is mitigated by level difference between attacker and recipient. If the attacker is higher level, the attack gains +1 magic damage per 5 levels difference. If the attacker is lower level than the victim, the attack diminishes by 1, applied to attack rolls per every 5 levels difference. Cool, I murmured. I hadn't realized that this Mafioso game had so much fantasy intertwined in the setting when I agreed to log in, but this was getting interesting. I just hoped it wasn't interesting, as in the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. I need to enchant this with some concealment for the broker. Want to stick around and watch? Broker? They'll deal it to the end user. I don't ask questions. You'd do best not to either if you're running deliveries. He fetched something off his workbench and laid the wand onto a soft flannel pad on the counter. I held up my hands. No more questions. Happy to watch. Thanks. Maybe hanging around would score another delivery. Here was to hoping. Uh-huh. Pratcha waved something palmed in his hand slowly along the wand from end to end a couple times, cursed when it wobbled, then started over. When he'd completed the motion smoothly, he shared a satisfied smile filled with crooked teeth that made his hands look clean. End user can get up to some shady stuff now, he commented, holding the wand up for me to analyze again. Not that I ask questions. His eyes sparkled with amusement. Maybe it was an inside joke. Behind the humor was a critical gaze, not because I was a cute girl, but because he was evaluating me in other ways. I'd seen that look before. I'd worn that look so many times. No, of course not. I laughed. When I focused on the wand again, I spied a line denoting a +2 concealment gain to its stats. I made a mental note to search my player's manual about die rolls and how they affected skills beyond the character creation process. Assuming I ever reached the point the document filled out, did most elements require an action check like tabletop fantasy games, or were the mechanics more selective in nature? Must be nice to have a skill like that. Yeah, it pays the bills. Maybe someday you'll learn. A girl can only hope. I was getting the hang of it. So, hey, I like you. I already got a guy taking it back or I'd hire you. I flicked through the bills, frowning. This is only 20. I'm supposed to get 50. Pratcha shook his head, snugging his beanie down lower, which pushed the goggles into his eyebrows. Or how about 20 and a favor? I squinted one eye. I can do a free enchant, maybe get you a piece of information when you need it. Helps a newcomer to grease the wheels if you get my drift. Tell you what, I'll even put a guarantee in your log so you can cash in when you're ready. Favors or information often prove more valuable than 30 measly bucks. What do you think? 35 and the favor, I countered, hands on hips. And I still want the full value when I cash in the favor. Up to 30 bucks worth of info then? He smacked the counter. Deal. You have learned the negotiation skill. Your negotiation skill has reached rank 2. You have entered into a contract with Pratcha. Pratcha owes you one favor or a piece of information valued at up to 30 bucks according to fair market prices at the time of transaction. Fair market prices can be found in your interface by opening the economics bubbles. Interesting. Favors held economic value. That was new. I thought economics and bubbles filled my HUD. Your player's manual has been updated with the following. Mafioso Online Economics. They were broken into categories for districts, professions, gigs, and more. My eyes tried to cross, so I thought close and let the bubbles melt away. The shop sharpened from the blur it had become. Pratcha beamed as he set the wand back into the case, then sealed it again. Tell you what, I've got something you can take with you to one of the Martino's men, if you want to make some bucks. He'll pay you. You have been offered a quest. Last run of the day. Deliver the sealed package to Vex at the location specified on your map. Rewards, $50, 175 XP. The dot on my map faded as I redirected my attention to the gnome. Might as well, huh? Sure. Lesson learned, I didn't ask what it was that time. He bent to retrieve a rectangular package wrapped in brown paper, knotted with twine, and smudged with dirty fingerprints. The package clunked when he set it on the display case and proved hefty when I picked it up to tuck it into my little backpack. Something metal? A block of granite? I buckled the bag closed, then slid it back over my shoulders with the bag covering my chest this time. I'd traveled enough in the real world to know that anything out of my sightline was vulnerable to thieves. Pracha gave an approving nod. You're looking for an office on the second floor at that location. Vex is a lawyer. Well, consigliere to the boss, as he prefers to say. So he's going to check that package thoroughly when you bring it in. Don't be offended. He's a natural-born dick. I see. Thanks for showing me that. I made a gesture to simulate the enhancement he'd performed with the stone. Sure thing. Take it easy, kid. Come back when you're ready for that favor. I waved to him as I headed out but spun at the door. Hey, it's pretty late. Is his office going to be open? He threw me the kind of empathetic look that said, poor thing doesn't know jack shit yet. Everything's open. River City never sleeps. And is there a shortcut across to the human district? He grunted. Only if you go straight through the ravine, and that's likely to take you longer in real time. What with the river and dealing with the winding paths nonsense. Not to mention how dark it is. Just head up and around. Trust me on that. You don't want to go down there at night lest you have to. I sighed. I amused myself on the way back across town by jotting notes about the people and places I encountered. Where the end of the bridge met the road, I stopped to admire the tumbling white water below, contemplating the long drop down into the harbor. A bubble popped up to announce that this was Infinity River. But of course. The bridge accepted two-way traffic, but it was narrow and tight between the pedestrian lanes and tall lamps against either railing. By any standard, the bright and lovely view into the ravine was a delightful picture of nature and all that happy crap. But it would also be a bad place to get caught by someone with nasty intentions, and I wouldn't forget that as I walked on. Bridges were not particularly safe places to get trapped at night, in River City or the real world. By the game clock, it was well past midnight when I crossed into the human district again, heading past the north gate on the east side of the river. I had no idea how the human families had divided their control of the district, but Martino's lawyer seemed to be located at the north side, so I got to check out the neighborhood from a different angle. I passed Mandy's Meatballs, Vinny's Jumbo Sausage, Come In and Die Hair Salon, and a dry cleaner with a window sign reading, Drop your pants here. We guarantee satisfaction. I had the distinct impression that the Martinos had a sense of humor, or the people around them did, at least. The office tower was 5 stories, all concrete and glass, with marble floors and bright brushed steel surfaces. No elevator, though. I glanced at the signboard in the lobby as I passed, tipping my head to the ogre in uniform standing with his thumbs tucked into a sword belt. His nameplate indicated he was security. I stopped in case I was supposed to check in, but he ignored me, so I climbed glossy stairs to the second floor, where I paused to find Vex Legal on the directional signage. It was to the left, past big potted plants and glowing half-spheres of light fixtures on the marbled walls. The quality of illumination was a bit strange, I thought, as I slowed to eye one of the sconces. Magic, maybe? Glass doors greeted me down the hall, with Vex Legal painted in fancy gold lettering, like something from the Old West with loads of flourishes and pretense. I pulled open the door, then approached the secretary's desk. She busied herself by sorting paperwork, then folding it into envelopes. She wore old-style librarian chic clothes, from back when they used to lend out actual hard copies of books instead of the more efficient and environmentally friendly digital kind. You know, a severe countenance yet kind of hot. White blouse buttoned up to her throat. I'd have bet she had on a charcoal-colored pencil skirt. I waited while she continued sorting. She kept at it so long, irritation crept over me and seeped into my tone. I'm here to see Mr. Vex. She didn't look up, not that she'd have to tip her head much to see someone short as me. Minimal effort, really. He's busy. I'm delivering a package to him. You can leave it here, she murmured, pausing to lick her fingers to separate one page from another. I can't, actually. I meant to give it to Mr. Vex personally. It's in the contract. She glanced at the imposing wooden door across from her, shaking her head. He's in with Don Martino. I'm afraid he can't see you now, but you can wait if you like. She gestured to a black leather chair with a dismissive hand. Fine, I'll wait. I dropped into the armchair, allowing a sigh to hiss between my teeth. The backward backpack rested neatly on my lap. She shot me a disapproving look, then went back to her sorting and enveloping, pushing her hair behind her ear on one side. I wondered if she wore that scowl permanently, or if I'd done something to bring it on. Her unhelpful attitude left me wanting to harass her a bit. Do you know how long he'll be? No, I don't, but you can leave your package here if you'd prefer. I don't prefer. Suit yourself. I had plenty of time to reflect on the suitability of the name Vex. She continued to eye me over the make-busy she had going on. Even though I could have checked my interface, I let my gaze slide to the cabinet clock standing in the corner, marking time. Nearly 1. I suppressed my sigh so she wouldn't get the satisfaction of knowing I was aggravated by the delay. A teenage boy pulled open the door. He plunked a paper bag on the desk. Lunch from Vinnie's. The secretary paid him with money she retrieved from a desk drawer, not a drip of amusement on her face despite the kid's innuendo. She got up with the bag in hand. Yup, pencil skirt, but it was brown to match her eyes. I'll just be a minute. Then she disappeared into a room next to her desk. I guessed she was talking to me as I was the only one around. The delivery boy had left promptly upon payment. She'd left the door open, so I leaned forward in my chair to watch her open the lunch bag and slip plates from an overhead cupboard. An inkling of an opportunity lurched into my mind. While I might otherwise have been patient, the outside world waited, and at some point, Brenner and Jack were going to yank me out of Mafioso Online. There were various reasons they would. Injury updates, the feds or the mob homing in on the pod location. The receptionist's occupied state might be my lone opportunity to hurry things along, to assert myself, or my halfling self. And if she yelled at me, so what? Wouldn't be the first time I'd been barked at in my life. Shit, I'd been in the military. I'd had a barrel-chested drill sergeant light me up daily for weeks. A platoon officer with a penchant for verbal abuse that made the military a perfect career choice. My ears were immune. So I shuffled to the brass and mahogany door, gave a quick rap, then let myself in. By the time Miss Librarian's head came around, I was halfway across the threshold. The two people inside gave expectant looks that promptly fell when I turned out not to be their lunch. I stepped in and shut the door behind me. "Dorothea!" the human called out. She sat on the client side of the desk, but at an angle as if to make it seem more collegial. I hadn't expected Don Martino to be a woman, the way the secretary had dropped the name. Interesting that she wasn't using the female linguistic equivalent of Donna, but maybe she enjoyed the element of surprise. Perhaps she didn't want it confused for her first name, or maybe it was a power move. I didn't care enough to guess. I have a delivery for Mr. Vex. Right to the point so they couldn't kick me out before I completed my quest objective. I jerked the bag open and pulled out the grubby package. The tall and slender man behind the desk rose to reveal the full picture of his slick, tailored suit with interwoven, shimmering threads. I'm Vex. Librarian wannabe Dorothea burst through the door but was dismissed with the half gesture of one hand, as if she was of little consequence. It might seem shallow, but I enjoyed that. I squinted my gaze to see if the system would describe some magic properties of Vex's attire, like the wand at Pratcha's. It did, but I didn't have time to start reading about the suit of the honeyed tongue before I realized that the man had offered his hand. His good looks verged on androgynous, and his huge gray eyes were emphasized by silky silver hair pulled back into a complicated plait. Flustered, I stepped forward to pass the weighty package to him, which he snatched with spidery fingers ringed in elaborate silver and gemstones that glinted with every dexterous gesture. His gaze flicked to the tattoo on my wrist, then away without comment or change of expression. I focused on him long enough that his bare stats popped up with his name, since he'd introduced himself, and I was surprised to see he wasn't an elf, but a fairy. Interesting. Not a starter race. Don Martino. The woman offered a half bob of her chin while Vex examined the package. She stood tall in her own tailored suit of aubergine, her hair pinned up to allow only a few dark ringlets to drape around medium cheekbones. Her makeup was subtle but striking. In short, she was the kind of woman who drew attention and held it without exposing skin. I haven't seen you before. Uh-huh. I straightened. I mean, yes, ma'am. The bubbles started popping up like I'd blown soap through a plastic loop. You have completed a quest. Last run of the day. Objective completed. Deliver the sealed package to Martino's man, Vex, at the spot specified on your map. Rewards. $50, 175 XP text flooded a bubble that took up half my sightline on the right. A burst of music spotlighting the high-pitched wail of an accordion filled my ears. Congratulations, you have reached level 2. A four-sided die appeared beneath the word brawn, rolled across my field of vision, bounced off the opposite edge, then stopped in the center to reveal a roll of 2. Just my luck, it was negated by my halfling penalty, which reduced it to 1. More dies rolled, and system messages popped up in separate floating bubbles. Determination rolls a 1, deceit rolls a 2, intimidation rolls a 2, logic rolls a 1, recovery rolls a 2, vitality rolls a 3, versatility rolls a 2. The Don tilted her head to one side, as if she'd been watching my darting gaze with interest. But I didn't get the impression she'd witnessed my level up. Do you often run deliveries for Pracha? I'm more freelance in nature. Keeps my options open. I rubbed my hand on the side of my pants to be sure it wasn't as grubby as the package I'd been handling, then offered it to the woman. I'm Ren. Good to meet you. I wasn't sure if she preferred to be called Dawn or something else, so I clipped my greeting. Better to err on the side of caution if I wanted to make the right impressions in River City. She didn't so much as glance at my offered hand. Vex is my consigliere, she explained, tipping her head toward the spidery fairy standing behind the desk examining the package. Pleased to meet you, I said to her lawyer. My cheeks warmed a little. I shifted my gaze from the man to the shelves behind him, where tomes, dominated the decor. Interspersed among the library were a veritable trove of glittering objets d'art. A tarnished sword engraved with runes lay along the edge of a line of books all similarly bound in dark leather with gilt titles. An oversized egg spattered with rainbow colors nested in a thatch of gold wire. A winged lizard glared from a domed cage. I could have browsed for hours. Vex dropped the contents of the package into an oversized drawer, then gave a clipped nod. Thank you. I've been waiting for this one. His smile was full of sharp teeth that would have been right at home in a shark. I didn't know what to do but give an enthusiastic nod of agreement as I refastened my little pack and got it turned around onto my back. Dorothea entered, edged me away from the desk with her hip, then set the plates down on the green blotter. I'll just get the beverages. Perhaps you should come with me, if your business is done. Just a moment. Mr. Vex all but purred, catching my full attention once more. He set his fingertips next to an ornate urn, while the other hand idly caressed its fancy gold filigree finish. With a final stroke that might have been reserved for a beloved pet, he drew his hands away. The edge of a gilded plate was visible from my angle, but I couldn't read what it said. Dorothea will pay you at the front desk. Wondering why he'd had me wait, but suspecting his touching of the urn was some kind of superstitious gesture when he did business, I sidled to the left, just enough to glimpse more of the plate, but the lettering was indecipherable. I got a pop-up bubble. You must learn the Fey language to read this inscription. Yes, sir. I nodded faintly as I dismissed the system message. Who was in that urn for him to dole out such obvious affection? Job well done, my dear. A little tip for you. The shark grin returned as he reached into his jacket for his wallet, selected a note, then passed it to me. A trustworthy runner is valuable. Good day. He said it as if bowing or tipping his head in acknowledgement, but he did neither. Vex turned away and resumed his seat like a piece of origami folding away. A sense of loss swept over me, as if exiting his presence would ruin the rest of my day. Strange as all get out. I had suspicions why, but no way to verify them. It certainly had nothing to do with my natural dispositions, sexually, but just weird. I let myself out, collected my fee, then left before Dorothea's laser gaze could burn me. Since it might have been uncouth, it wasn't until I was in the hallway outside and approaching the stairs that I unfolded the tip the fairy lawyer slipped me. $50. Who cared what Dorothea thought? I'd probably saved myself an hour or two. I sucked in deep breaths when I hit the sidewalk, and soon found it easier to shake off the cloud of infatuation Mr. Vex seemed to have cast over me. Enough weird shit. I had questions to be answered.
Hello all, Arlo Adams here. I hope you're enjoying Mafioso Online. I just wanted to drop a reminder to click those like and subscribe buttons, and if you're enjoying the book, please leave a comment down below.